Hello and welcome to the Nightmare Vault. Today we'll be covering Dead Bart.
Well, this one actually takes me back, and I was kind of surprised when you picked an old one out.
Yeah,
Considering you tend to stick to the newer stuff.
yeah. I thought I'd jump back and do something.
Although when you were looking through this kind of did pique your interest.
Yes, I am a very big fan of The Simpsons. Here in Australia, there was the golden age of as soon as 6 p.m. hit, it was, The Simpsons were always on the TV in my household growing up. So, yeah.
For me, it was MASH.
MASH, yeah.
Which is weird because I'm younger than you in the show.
Yes.
Which is surprising, but
Yeah.
even that it was JAG.
Oh, yeah. I remember JAG. That was...
And I think later on in life, it was like NCIS.
Yes.
Which actually, I love just turning on the telly, and watching some NCIS.
NCIS was a pretty good show, particularly, the first...
Didn't they do recently a spin-off where it was in Sydney?
There's so many spin-offs. I don't know how that show keeps going.
It just does.
Yeah, but there's a Sydney one. I remember watching like the first episode of I think there was like a Florida one or...
God, that would be wild.
Some sort of, southern state in America. It was very odd.
I think, you're thinking of Miami. CSI Miami. Is it CSI Miami? I think actually didn't NCIS also go with a similar name, or did it go with...
I'm not sure. Yeah, so being a massive Simpsons fan, I was definitely drawn to this one. I do also take into consideration the runtime of the stories as well.
Oh, yeah, that's my biggest problem. Is this is good, let's cover it.
Yeah.
It's like 2 hours of reading. So, the showers is coming sometime in the near future.
Eventually. So as usual, this is a story which I haven't read, and this is one that you're very familiar with.
Although I actually haven't listened/read it in quite a long while, so...
Yeah. So with that in mind, what do you remember overall? We've talked about how some of these classic ones, some stand up really well over time. Others, that have a bit more of a nostalgic value to you.
Not only that, but the early ones definitely have their charm.
So where does this one, in your memory, sort of lie?
Again, since it's been so long, it's kind of it's just like try to dredge up the lake, and it's like...
Right.
It's like, I'll get something eventually, but...
Yeah, so you'll probably have more to say after we go through the story.
I kind of remember how I found it a bit eerie, especially the final part of it.
Which I guess is...
looking back on it, it's like, what were you smoking? I guess
Fair.
It sort of is eerie when you think about it.
Okay.
I guess when we get into it.
You know how Fox has a weird way of counting Simpsons episodes? They refuse to count a couple of them, making the amount of episodes inconsistent. The reason for this is a lost episode from season 1. Finding details about this missing episode is difficult. No one who was working on the show at the time likes to talk about it. From what has been pieced together, the episode's production number was 7G06. And the title was Dead Bart. The episode labelled 7G06, Moaning Lisa, was made later and given Dead Bart's production code to hide the later's existence. It also was written entirely by Matt Groening. During production of the first season, Matt started to act strangely. He was very quiet and seemed nervous and morbid. Mentioning this to anyone who was present around Matt at the time resulted in them getting very angry and forbidding you to ever mention it to Matt himself. I first heard of it at an event where David Silverman was speaking. Someone in the crowd asked about the episode, and Silverman simply left the stage, ending the presentation hours early. In addition to getting angry, asking anyone who was on the show about Dead Bart would cause them to do everything they could to stop you from directly communicating with Matt Groening. At a fan event, I managed to follow him after he spoke to the crowd, and eventually had a chance to talk to him alone as he was leaving the building. He didn't seem upset that I had followed him. He probably expected a typical encounter with an obsessive fan. When I mentioned the lost episode though, all colour drained from his face and he started trembling. When I asked him if he could tell me any details, he sounded like he was on the verge of tears. He grabbed a piece of paper, wrote something on it, and handed it to me. He begged me never to mention the episode again. The piece of paper had a website address on it. I would rather not say what it was for reasons you'll see in a second. I entered the address into my browser and came to a site that was completely black, except for a line of yellow text, a link. I clicked on it, and a file started downloading. Once the download was complete, my computer went crazy. It was the worst virus I had ever seen. System restore didn't work. The entire computer had to be rebooted. Before doing this though, I copied the file onto a CD. I tried to open it on my now empty computer, as I suspected there was an episode of The Simpsons on it. The episode started off like any other, but had very poor quality animation. If you've ever seen the original animation for Some Enchanted Evening, it was similar, but less stable. The first act was fairly normal, but the way the characters acted was a little off. Homer was angrier, Marge seemed depressed, Lisa behaved anxiously, and Bart appeared to have genuine anger and hatred towards his parents. The episode was about the Simpsons going on a plane trip. Near the end of the first act, the plane was taking off. Bart was fooling around, as you'd expect. However, as the plane was about 50 feet off the ground, Bart broke a window and was sucked out. Matt had an idea that the animated style of the Simpsons world represented life, and that death made things more realistic, hence why it was used in the episode. The picture of Bart's corpse was barely recognizable. They took full advantage of it not having to move, and made an almost photorealistic drawing of his dead body. Act 1 ended with a shot of Bart's corpse. When Act 2 started, Homer, Marge, and Lisa were sitting at a table, crying. The crying went on and on. It became more pained and realistic. Better acting than you would think possible. The animation started to decay even more as they cried, and you could hear murmuring in the background. The characters could barely be made out. They were stretching and blurring, looking like deformed shadows with random bright colours thrown on them. There were faces in the window, flashing in and out so that you were never sure what they looked like. This crying went on for all of Act 2. Act 3 opened with a title card saying 1 year had passed. Homer, Marge, and Lisa were skeletally thin and still sitting at the table. There was no sign of Maggie or the pets. They decided to visit Bart's grave. Springfield was completely deserted, and as they walked to the cemetery, the houses became more and more decrepit. They all looked abandoned. When they got to the grave, Bart's body was lying in front of his tombstone, looking just like it did at the end of Act 1. The family started crying again. Eventually, they stopped and just stared at Bart's body. The camera zoomed in on Homer's face. According to summaries, Homer tells a joke at this part, but it isn't audible in the version I saw, so you can't tell what he's saying. The view zoomed out as the episode came to a close. The tombstones in the background had the names of every Simpsons guest star on them. Some that no one had heard of in 1989. Some that haven't been on the show yet. All of them had death dates as well. For guests who died since, like Michael Jackson and George Harrison, the dates were when they would die. The credits were completely silent and seemed handwritten. The final image was the Simpsons family on their couch, like in the intros, but all drawn in the hyper-realistic, lifeless style of Bart's corpse. A thought occurred to me after seeing the episode for the first time. You could try to use the tombstones to predict the death of living Simpsons guest stars, but there was something odd about most of the ones who haven't died yet. All of their deaths are listed as the same date.
I'm curious to see what you think about this one.
I guess, yeah, with it being one of the shorter ones that we've had a look at, as it's written, it's not too bad. I can definitely see, yeah, why it is so well reviewed. It has definitely room for improvement, which I think is a good thing. And yeah, has some good mystery in there as well. But yeah, there's definitely a few shortcomings. But I think overall, it's not too bad. As you kind of mentioned, I can see the charm in this one.
Oh,
for
yeah,
sure.
definitely.
I think, yeah, I guess it does the classic thing of, yeah, using something which is already, has nostalgic value in it, which...
And then kind of twisting it.
And then, yeah, sort of twisting it.
Not only that, but I think this is probably one of the ones that paved the way for like lost episode creepypastas.
Oh, okay, I see.
So I think, I'm not sure if this was the first lost episode creepypasta to come out, but it was one of the few that kind of helped popularize that kind of subgenre.
I see.
The
Yeah.
other notable ones being like I actually kind of brought up when kind of talking about them is Suicide Mouse and Squidward Suicide.
Yep.
Even though there is also another one that's quite notable, that's a lost episode of a fictional show, which was quite interesting.
Oh.
And that's one that we may cover in the near future. I'm gonna kind of, oh God, what was the name of it? I think Candlewood Cove, I believe the name was.
Okay.
And it's actually quite interesting.
That almost sounds like a Goosebumps book.
It actually probably would.
Yeah.
Although I think some of the stuff that happens in it is probably a bit too much for a Goosebumps book, but
Right. Yeah.
the title definitely makes it feel like.
Yeah, it definitely does.
But I guess enough about that. I guess it's time for my thoughts on this story, which it's weird because in some parts it's aged quite well and others not so much.
I would agree.
I think my biggest issue is like just kind of like how Matt Groening, because there's like I just don't like how he just just gets a piece of paper, writes down and is like, here.
Yeah.
That's kind of a bit of a gripe I have with it.
Okay.
Because I think I would, like, to a certain extent, I would be a little bit peeved if someone was to follow me after like an event in that. But at the same time, it's like,
I guess it is one of those things. Just curious. There wasn't any mention of so like when this is occurring. So when our I guess protagonist is at this convention and then approaching Matt Groening. So it doesn't mention if this is also in 2010 when the story was released, or if this is sort of set 5 years before or 10 years before. So it'd be interesting because I guess when writing the story you would have to put yourself in Matt Groening's position of both having been around for I guess a popular household name for at this point in time, if we are assuming that it's happening in 2010, 20 years. So people know him. He's already gone through all of like the big boom of The Simpsons and being a big celebrity, but I guess he's also would have carried that weight of the information that he's held this entire time regarding
not
this
only that,
episode.
but wouldn't he kind of sort of be like, kind of not even really obliged to the person and give him the link?
Yeah, there's that as well. I guess, what is...
That's kind of what I was coming from.
Yeah, like what is this fictional version of Matt Groening? What is his reasoning behind giving the link? Is he, sort of just like finally... Has he held it the whole time and now he's, had this conscious decision to...
Because, I just don't seem to be realistic. Like, if it traumatized you that much, wouldn't you kind of, not really oblige the person and probably kind of try and get out of Dodge if you could?
Yeah. What I guess,
Not only that, but also probably be a bit more hostile in your response.
Potentially,
Because it doesn't come off as like being that, what I would say, passive aggressive. Because I would think I would be passive aggressive if someone came up to me and asked me about something that was kind of seems to be as traumatizing as it was to him.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah. It would, I guess.
Not only that, but I'm not really familiar with Matt Groening's character, so I can't judge if this is something you'd do or not.
Yes. I guess
you'd have you're probably more familiar with the man than I am.
Yeah. So I guess to add some more context, I've got like actual DVD copies of the first 10 seasons. I've watched all of like the behind the scenes and the all the extra stuff, like even the storyboard versions of episodes and things like that. So, and documentaries of The Simpsons. But of course, that's only like secondhand or third-hand information, things that have been put out there. But he does seem, I guess, like someone that would be quite approachable, quite open to be approached by a fan and obliged to at least, sort of maybe not answer questions, but definitely, sign a signature and that sort of thing. Maybe, sign a
autograph or something.
Autograph, yeah. He definitely seems like a nice person, but obviously maybe that's just a perception that he puts out. But I guess that's the hard thing as well. We are thinking about the real life version and then this version that we get, which is this fictional version of a real life person.
But I think that with stories like this, you kind of have to have it so it's sort of believable. It's like, I guess that's the thing. It kind of feels believable at the same time, not really.
Yeah, it would have almost been better because obviously at like a lot of conventions you have like meet and greets, so it might have been better instead of having the
character stalk him.
Yeah, stalk him and then sort of approach in a back alley sort of way. Actually, you have maybe it was some special VIP meet and greet that cost a ton of money. And
I was going to say, imagine stalking Dead Severin down a back alley. They fake you.
Oh yeah, that's a different story. So that might have made things maybe a bit more realistic, but I guess it does go to the point where it's like everyone's trying to keep people away from Matt. So it also makes sense that he wouldn't do a meet and greet, but it also doesn't make sense that he would be walking alone after the convention. Like you would expect, him to
have some sort of security.
A helper in quotation marks to sort of move him from A to B so that people can't approach him in this way. But so there's definitely some shortcomings to how things come about. I guess, earlier on you brought up smile.jpg. This story could have definitely gone down that route of like internet message boards and things like that, which would have just been a bit more of a copy sort of paste job between the two. So
I guess we must kind of get onto the lost episode part of the CreepyPasta, which I'm curious to see your thoughts about it.
Yeah, so just the whole idea of there being a lost episode. I kind of feel like I've seen something happen before. Maybe it's been like an episode of the X-Files or something like that where it's got that sort of feel to it. There's like it's kind of like in the zeitgeist or it's in this sort of like subculture of like, sort of things being mythologized. Like, there's a lost episode of this show and, only a handful of people know about it and know the true reasons of why it is lost.
Which I guess plays into the whole thing with like lost media, which there's nothing really special about some lost media. It's just simply stuff lost to time in most cases.
Yeah, lost to time,
Which is interesting because actually some of the earliest films on the Titanic disaster are kind of lost media.
Oh, right. And there's plenty of, theories and conspiracies regarding just like that in general, the Titanic, but then you have, the lost media around the Titanic as well. And I think,
which makes sense because I know a lot of older classic Hollywood films did get lost when I think one of the biggest studios had a fire, which kind of happened in the area where a lot of the classic old films were stored, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah.
Because there's no real backup of those.
That is right, yeah. I can't remember the full details, but I've heard the story and the massive, because that is the thing as well, is that film itself is so highly flammable that as soon as there's any heat around, it really has to be stored very meticulously. Yeah, the whole idea, it even goes back to things like, archaeologists and people, sort of like uncovering unmarked graves and things like that, how these fantastical stories get built around something quite boring, but it's like the fantastical stories make that boring thing more interesting. So like sort of a lot of Egyptian stuff where it is just like the
I can't. What was it that I think it was Was it the curse of Tutankhamun's tomb? Or was it Tutankhamun? I can't remember the name.
It's one of the great rulers.
Yeah, like there was believed to be a curse on those that actually opened up. I think it's Tutankhamun's tomb.
It's either Tutankhamun or maybe Ramses.
Although there is a reasonable explanation for why they died, but at the time they just believed it was a curse.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
So it's rather interesting.
Yeah, and it's I guess we're kind of touching on the whole thing of like just media in general and how it can take something quite mundane and put this amazing story around it to make it a bit more interesting. But then the whole idea of the lost media, it's really fascinating, and I think it makes sense then sort of around this time period as well. You have like things like found footage movies being very popular.
I say 2010 wouldn't have Blair Witch. No, I think Blair Witch would have came out a fair bit before 2010.
It would have, yeah.
Wasn't that like not 98 but early 2000s?
Early 2000s, I think. 99.
Oh, 99. Okay.
Yeah, definitely Blair Witch was like, I think that
was the big one.
Yeah, the big one that got kind of a cult following. And then after this, you get...
I know there's like maybe one or two before it that were quite noteworthy, but this was the one that really got the whole lost footage thing mainstream.
Yeah, I think as soon as you mentioned found footage, lost footage movies, this is the first one that pops up to anyone's mind.
Although I guess it's been nice to go on this train of thought, but I guess we kind of got to get back to it, which I think my biggest gripe with the episode itself is the whole hyper-realistic / photorealistic drawings, because this is back in the first season of The Simpsons, which I just don't think the technology was quite there yet to do something like that.
I guess it sort of begs the question, was it the animators drawing, were they compelled to draw photorealistic versions of the Simpsons characters, or was it like a spiritual entity coming and manipulating the images to make them photorealistic? Actually,
that's a good point.
Yeah, there's like, or is it, like some sort of manifestation of like reality coming into play? There's a lot of questions. Yeah, there's a lot of ways it could go. And
I guess a lot of ways to interpret it.
Yeah, and I think that is
actually, I think one of the strongest seats.
Yeah, a lot left unsaid, which then has your imagination going,
kind of filling in the blanks.
Yeah, but at the same time, there maybe should be some more specifics in some areas. And I think you can kind of see that even just going through the story. Like there's some paragraphs that have like really big chunks, and then there's other paragraphs that are quite small. And sometimes that makes sense because like certain paragraphs are just like linking to the next section of the story.
Although the one thing I do like is the kind of end, which is left up into interpretation.
Yeah, which I think is a good, probably the best use of not saying
much
exactly what it is that's happened here.
But again, it's kind of like, what happened? Why is all the ones that haven't died yet, all their deaths are listed as the same date?
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing I like about it is they don't actually give a precise date.
Yeah, which leaves it quite cool and quite open-ended. I think at that point, at least to me, my theory is that it's some sort of like apocalyptic event that's occurring, which then is kind of goes back to what I mentioned previously of is there some sort of deity, some sort of god? Is this God talking to Matt Groening, and it's sort of his prediction of the end of the world. That's kind of like where my mind goes, and particularly with that last sentence of their all deaths are listed as the same date.
Well, I guess a bit of a segue here. I guess we can let the audience in it here, and it's like kind of what you think of what it means by all the deaths are listed as the same date.
Yeah, what are your guys' theories? Because I'm
leaning towards like an apocalypse, that's kind of the end of the world.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense, unless there is. I mean, because obviously it doesn't say everyone in the world. There's only tombstones on the guest appearances, the guest stars. So I wonder if maybe it goes a little bit further, and it's more like anyone who is associated with The Simpsons in this way that's worked on it, if they
all just end up dying at that point if they haven't died beforehand.
Yeah, if there's like some sort of curse because they've worked on the production. Sort of like, it's one of the Shakespeare stories, Macbeth. There's a whole story around like the production of Macbeth, and anytime the production happens, there's these like tragic events where, you know, half the cast dies, even before, you know, the opening night of the production actually happening. You know, there's and that's kind of another historic one where there's all these like random occurrences where, you know, the lead actor gets some sort of rare disease that hadn't been seen in 100 years, or like there's some sort of fire that burns the entire theater down on opening night. I can't remember. Yeah, maybe I'm just making a little bit of that up, but there is something out there. I'm pretty sure it's Macbeth. So it could go down that route as well, as like anyone who works on The Simpsons gets this curse, and then for some reason, they all die on the same date.
Which, oh God, that kind of leads to the questions like, would you rather know how you die or when you die?
Yeah, which it's kind of amazing that you bring that up as well, because I think around this time period, you know, there's those websites where you could like put in your name and your date of birth, and then it would give you a date in the future of when you would die. So yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. In one aspect, I would love to know the date, because then I could just like, you know, if there's things I'm doing in my life that I can just like say F it to and just go and do exactly what I want. You know, if I got a date and it was in 2 years time or even 10 years time or whatever, I'll just sort of throw all the crap out of my life and just pursue exactly what I wanted to do.
That's kind of my line of thinking. Of like, if I know how much time I got left on this planet, I'm gonna start knocking off my bucket list.
Yeah, absolutely. Or
especially if it was like, oh yeah, you only have a year left to live.
Yeah, I think what most people sort of think is, if you only got given a year, what would you do? Yeah, it's a great question, and it's kind of hard to answer.
I feel like it's kind of pointless knowing how you will die, because then, that's how you're going to die. So it's like you can't avoid it.
I guess, there's a different question. There's, when and how. How is, that's... I would rather not know how I die. Like, give me a date. That's probably fine. Don't give me a time, but definitely a date. But how I die, I don't really want to know that.
Well, I guess it's not so bad if it's like cancer or something.
I guess, then you can prepare for it. But knowing like it's some horrific accident would... I think you'll just live in constant anxiety.
Like, hit by a bus.
Yeah.
Now you're going to avoid buses like the plague.
Yes, that's right.
Which, what's the point in that? Because you're going to get hit by a bus anyway.
Yeah.
So even if you do your best to avoid a bus.
Yes. It's there's
I guess that's another question for the viewers is,
I guess so.
would you rather know when you die or how you die?
Mm.
It's actually one of my favorite ones to ask people.
It's a good one.
This is a really good way to gauge someone's character.
Yeah, definitely. It's cool. I do kind of like that, this... Yeah, as you've mentioned,
I think we spent more time talking about the story than reading it.
Well, I think it's cool that such a short story can spurt so many interesting ideas. But I guess to get back to the story itself, if given the chance, would you improve it?
Yes and no.
Yeah,
it's like I feel like there's definitely spots where you can improve it, but at the same time, I think making those improvements kind of make it lose its luster.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. There's very small things, a few little more or less grammar-based changes. But as for the general overall story and flow of it, as we mentioned, there's plenty of maybe missed opportunities, or the way things occur aren't quite realistic. But I guess, should a creepypasta be realistic? Probably not.
No, I feel like creepypasta are the best when they're kind of like in a kind of a state of limbo between being plausible but also not. kind of being between the realm of, well, this realm and, well, some fictional one.
Yeah. What they call that? State of disbelief, I think. So yeah, somewhere.
I would say suspension of disbelief.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you. Yeah, suspension of disbelief, and yeah, how far can you go before you go? Yeah, you fall off, which I think this does pretty well.
Yeah, like it definitely keeps you engaged with it.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Being, well, kind of not realistic some aspects, but not so much that it's like, oh god, this is terrible.
And even when it does get to those points, it's fairly later in the story, so you're sort of like, I might as well just read the rest of it.
Yeah.
If it was a much longer story, it would be much easier to check out earlier and not read the entire thing. This is a cool one. I liked it overall.
If you were to rate it, what would you give it?
Out of 10, I want to try and not put my nostalgic value into this one, because I would definitely rate it much higher, but it's a pretty, I would say a pretty solid 6, leaning towards a 7, just because it has a lot of really good stuff going for it. There's room for improvement, but I think also the value that it adds of like leaving options open, leaving your imagination to fill in some of the gaps. I really like that.
With that, it's like half a point there for me.
Yeah.
So I guess I would come in at like a 6.5.
Cool.
I guess there you have it. That's Dead Bart. And actually, it's going to be interesting what's coming up next. I'm thinking I'm going to follow up with a personal favorite of mine. And that is, well, we did mention it earlier, Squidward Suicide.
Yeah. Which I think will be fun.
So I guess, maybe what? So I guess August is just going to be lost episodes, creepypastas.
I guess so, yeah. Sticking to the theme.
I guess that'll be the 2, creepypastas for August.
I think so. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one, so that, we kind of had this one as a base point, and then to make some comparisons.
Not only that, but we're also kind of covering my childhood, because this SpongeBob was kind of coming out when I was growing up.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess with that out of the way, leave us a like, subscribe to the channel for more of this creepypasta content.
And more tangents.
Yeah. And
that may or may not be right.
Yeah. And let us know what's your review rating for Dead Bart? How does it compare to some of the other lost episode stories?
And well, if you got any recommendations, feel free to let us know.
Absolutely. We'd definitely, take them into consideration moving forward. And I guess you'll see us in the next one.
Yep. Sayonara.